Welcome back to Following Noadon, a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 44, and we're doing chapters 77 through 80 of Words of Radiance. We are into part 5, and we are coming up really quickly on the end of the book. Paul and Eliot are joining me as always. I'll start with Eliot this week. How are you feeling, Eliot?
The tension is building. The tension is building in these chapters. I'm at one of those points where reading as slowly as we do is becoming really difficult. I just want to know what's on those next, last few pages here. So the excitement and anticipation. I've got a lot of those right now.
And Paul?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to go through these chapters here. But more excited, honestly, for afterwards getting free reign to kind of finish our book as we go into next week, because we're kind of at the peak anticipation right now as we finish this book.
For sure.
In where it's gonna go.
We'll do a short segment later on. I'll ask you guys several questions on your predictions on what's happening before the end of the book, what's not happening before the end of the book, but we'll get there. Paul, do you have 2 words to summarize this episode?
I do. So my 2 words for this week are converging and pinnacle.
Okay, converging and pinnacle. And Eliot, do you have 2 words?
I have for this week fealty and cost.
Fealty and cost. Okay, let's use these words and talk about this episode. All right, Eliot, I'm going to start with the word fealty, because whenever I hear that word, I think of that scene in Lord of the Rings when Denethor is knighting Pippin, and he uses that word. It's the only time I think that word is ever used in the English language. So go for it. What are we using it for?
I almost picked loyalty, but I decided on fealty because it was specifically that sort of kind of loyalty to an authority figure or loyalty to a commander or a king. Because we get a couple different instances of that throughout these chapters where someone's making a pretty big decision on fealty-ish. We have Shallan, who reveals herself to Dalinar. I feel like while pledging herself to him, the fact that she trusts him with that, I feel like that was big. That was a pretty big step of faith there with Dalinar and Shallan. And then, of course, we have Shen, who declares his loyalty rather strongly by joining Dalinar, essentially, or deciding he's his commanding officer and then helping the Alethi army go forward. Really fascinating scene between Elhokar and Kaladin, which really kind of tests on some fealty and loyalty type stuff. So yeah, a lot of that going on these chapters.
All right. Paul, you want to talk about your words a bit?
Yeah, so converging, I chose, and it took me longer than it should have to remember this word. I almost used the word smashing, like all the different points of view, like a lot of different things are kind of smashing or converging. It's a much better word for it here. And that kind of just goes into my second word, pinnacle. Basically just summarizing that everything is kind of coming to a head right now, and I feel like we're at the top of a roller coaster that's about to tip over almost.
Gotcha. All right. We can jump into chapter 77 here and start talking a little bit more specific. In the Way of Kings, we knew what the Way of Kings was from the beginning of part 2. Dalinar was talking about the Way of Kings. In this book, we knew what Words of Radiance was, but we lost it. It got sunk in the ocean, and we barely got to read any of it. But now, right at the beginning of this chapter, Shallan gets a copy of Words of Radiance, and it's actually Gaz who delivers it to her, which I think is kind of ironic. But yeah, we finally have our in world copy of Words of Radiance back. Did either of you pick up on some of the readings that she's doing here about the Old Knights Radiant? Someone want to pick this up?
It seems like she's reading a lot of the stuff that we've already seen a little bit. We had epigraphs, right, that were excerpt Words of Radiance not too long ago. So it seems like these might be. It seems like she's reading some of those passages that we've already read, and I noticed that she keyed in on kind of the same question that we had. She even says to herself, "What is this wicked thing of eminence that the Words of Radiance talked about?" And that was our big question: is what is it referencing that happened during the recreance, and what is this source of evil? Is it within the night, outside the Knights Radiant? Yeah, so Shallan's asking the same questions we are at this point.
Words of Radiance isn't completely reliable, as was mentioned here. It's written about 200 years after the Recreance, as it's called, after that day at Feverstone Keep that Dalinar's seen before. And so some of what we're reading is probably more reliable, but some of it, you have to take with a grain of salt. So no, we don't really know. Paul, I'm going to throw back over to you because you love talking about our love triangle, or maybe you really dislike it and pretend that you love it, one of the two. Shallan has this kind of offhand comment comparing Adolin and Kaladin. Did you catch this? And how's our love triangle going?
Yeah, I did catch it, and I'm glad you point this out a little bit, Trevor. First off, I don't know if I love it or hate it, but I mean, like I always say, love it or hate it, either way, it's an obsession. So I have to talk about it. So I made the claim on our last episode that I think Kaladin and Shallan are going to end up together at some point, or at least admitting that they're the one for each other, whether or not they can be together. What I took from this, if I remember correctly, Shallan is kind of comparing the two, and one is kind of the regal lord being like Adolin, and Kaladin kind of being the fearless leader, or the one who's I don't remember the term she uses exactly for Kaladin, but it was more of a character based, he's very respectable and heroic.
Elliot can
I
key
think
in
she
here.
thinks about it kind of I think she uses words like passionate and intense, and there's I think she's stuck on the fact that Kaladin has this energy that Adolin maybe doesn't. Adolin is find more logical sense, or more logical fit perhaps, but Kaladin's maybe a little more exciting, I suppose.
He's very much a wild card,
Right.
as we've seen throughout our entire story here. But yeah, I guess it was in our last episode we saw that Kaladin, whether he's admitting it, has some feelings for Shallan, and I feel like this is kind of showing that Shallan has some feelings for Kaladin, whether or not she's going to admit it, because she does very much like Adolin, and so I don't think anything will come of it soon. But who knows? Maybe something tragic will happen, and Adolin will get caught up in this battle, and Kaladin will be there to comfort her or something, and then there's no triangle. But I don't know. We will see. I hate that I'm saying this, but I'm Team Kaladin. I get I don't if we're choosing sides. Yeah.
I forced you guys to choose at the end of part 4. So and you said Team
Yeah, that's true.
Kaladin. So
Okay. Yeah. One thing I did want to say before we move too much further, um, I think Gaz is really funny how his character has kind of developed. I wouldn't even say it's that much of a development, but I just think of like if Shalon and Kaladin ever talked about Gaz, like what they would have to say, because it would be like I feel like Shalon is only seeing Gaz in his best moments,
Right.
and Kaladin has only seen him in his worst moments, and so it's like really hysterical. That and it's really funny to me that Gaz is the one that has the like gives the copy of Words of Radiance to Shalon. I didn't actually pick that up honestly. I knew that they talked for a while. I remember like hearing that in the chapter, but yeah, kind of wild.
It's funny too how Gad's like role in the play here has completely changed. He originally was the nasty that you're supposed to hate. Now he's the comic relief almost. He just kind of comes in and it's like perky little Gaz, like, oh, I found the book. You told me to find it, so I went and I found it. You know, like different from the role or kind of he was fulfilling in Way of Kings. Very interesting.
Right.
It it definitely goes to show that I'm not as good at predicting about characters as I thought I would, or understanding characters, because also, um, I guess going a little further in this chapter, Shalon is talking to Navani a good bit,
Mm-hmm.
and way back in like before Shalon ever got to the Shattered Plains, we were talking about like it's going to depend on who she meets there, and I had been under the impression the whole time like she needs to run into like Navani because Navani is going to be super like caring like up for her and like loving and kind of take her under her wing. And we really saw the exact opposite of that throughout the story. And they talk here, and I honestly couldn't help but feel like some tension still. I feel like Navani's like trying to be nice, but it almost felt a little bit forced.
And
Um,
forced is a great way to put it because up until this point, Navani has been described as the engineer. Like she is the mathematician, the engineer, the artifabrian, as they call her. And Shalon is the artist. Like she is 100% emotion and like how does how does this make you feel type thing. And so when Navani enters this carriage, Navani's trying to apologize and it doesn't really come off as like the most smooth apology, and Shalon's like, no, it's okay, like don't worry about it, and then they kind of kick it off from there. But that you're right, there's definitely some tension here that Navani is trying to apologize for her emotions, which she didn't have under control, and she doesn't know how to handle that.
It's definitely still awkward for sure.
But Navani does back Shalon up when she sits her down. So Navani finally gets all or most of the information that Shalon has, and instead of taking that information and controlling the situation, Navani just gives it to Shalon. She says, okay, I will tell my scholars and my ardents to do whatever you want. You're in charge now, so go for it. Which I think was really cool that she didn't try to, take it from Shalon, but she just backed Shalon up.
Yeah, I really like that too. I thought along with Shalon that Navani was going to take over and kind of say, "Oh, I'll take it from here," sort of thing. But she didn't. She really kind of empowered Shalon and said, "No, this I'll support you. Tell us what you want to do." That was really cool.
Shalon, this is like one of the first conversations Shalon has had with Navani, and she tells her that Yasna was a Knights Radiant, and Yasna is Navani's daughter. So Navani is a little skeptical at first, but she seems to actually take this news rather well. Like I always thought that news would be more earth shattering for Navani, but she's a little hesitant at first, but after everything, she's like, of course she was. She was Yasna.
Yeah. Like, if anyone was going to be a Knights Radiant, it would be her. So it was kind of also a bit of an emotional moment. I believe it was in this chapter that Navani just kind of reminisces a bit about Yasna with this, and it makes me feel a lot for her because, like I said, I was wrong. I expected her to be very like open and caring towards Shalon. But as we've seen, I think she kind of associates that, like Shalon, with the loss of her daughter Yasna, and she just kind of talked about how bright she was as a kid, like correcting her like logical fallacies at like age 6 and all this crazy stuff.
Yep.
And just how bright she was, and it was kind of sad to see that. But yeah, it was good to see. I was happy to see Navani kind of intentionally tried to bridge a gap there, or kind of work through things and stuff. Was good to see.
Yeah, that's probably exactly what Navati needs at this moment is, to be able to have someone that she can talk about Yasna with. She's at that point in the grieving process where she's ready to process it. So that's I'm sure that's exactly what she needs right now.
Way back in chapter 5, chapter 6, when Yasna died, I asked you guys if this was an actual death or if this was a fake death, if somehow she faked her own death. And Eliot, I believe you were on the no, it's not a real death side, because you had some theory about splitting her soul in Shadesmar or something like that. And Paul, you thought it was a real death and she wasn't coming back. And so far, we haven't seen anything. So, how are those predictions holding up for you guys?
I do want to say, as I was reading this, just kind of how things are coming to a big climax here as we get to the end of the book. If she does come back somehow, if there's an explanation, I think it would be here at the end of the book. Like it would be some grand, that's like the Sander Lanch, like the big thing. Yasna comes out and everyone's like, "Whoa, how are you here? That's not okay." But like, we're happy you're here.
Right.
All this stuff. I'm still on the train that I think she's just gone. But there is the chance. Like, I see the chance.
I'm going to double down on my theory. I'm all in. I actually got a little bit of encouragement on this theory recently back in the Taravangian interlude. We didn't have enough time to bring it up, but I did notice that when Zeth is talking to Taravangian, right? He says, I made a night radiant. There was a surge binder on the plains. Taravangian's initial response to that in his head is, oh no, he met Yasna. And his like follow-up thought to that was, oh man, she must have faked her death just like I suspected. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one is perhaps suspecting that Yasna may have faked her death. So Taravangian at least is considering that option as well.
There's also another tidbit in here which isn't directly related to Yasna, but if you connect a few dots here, in this next chapter, chapter 78, which we'll get to here in a second, Shalon reveals herself to Dalinar, and then Dalinar's immediate response is, okay, you're going back to the war camp, so we can't risk you out here. And Shalon's response is, I'm pretty sure I could get stabbed straight through the stomach and heal myself without a scar because of Stormlight. So couldn't Yasna do the same thing? She was a nice Radiant at the time. She was farther along in the process than Shalon is at the moment. So
that's a great point.
Well, don't we know that there are like two types of Knights Radiant that like have restorative powers?
Yes. So there are one of the surges is regrowth, which we've been told, and each Knight's Radiant shares a surge with another with another order. So only 2 Knight's Radiant orders would have regrowth.
Okay. So like,
The-
do we know that Kaladin has it, and we know does Shallan have it? She referenced it
She
there, but
does
we've never.
not.
I was gonna say we've never seen her use that.
We do not.
So,
Neither Kaladin nor Shallan have regrowth.
but isn't Kaladin like healing himself?
He is.
Well, that's the question, right? Is we've seen Lift in that interlude use her healing power on some. They talk about the whole regrowth thing. We've seen Kaladin and Shallan heal themselves,
Correct.
but we haven't seen them, as far as we know. I mean, Kaladin heals other people a lot, so maybe he was using some surge power in that, but I don't think it was like explicitly clear. So that's still a question that I have, is like, can all Knights Radiant heal themselves, but only like the 2 orders that have regrowth can heal others? Is that maybe how it works? Like that's a question I'm still looking for an answer for.
Okay, that would make sense. I guess I was under the impression that it was just there are 2 orders that can restore at all, and I assumed it was like
We've seen
Kaladin was one of the 2.
We've seen 2 people who have restored other people with Stormlight, and that is Lift. And if you remember the cobbler who is healing the young orphan, he heals his foot with Stormlight. He doesn't really know what he's doing, but he knows he needs Stormlight for it, and there's a spread nearby. He doesn't really know what's happening. And then Scarface dude comes in and kills him. If you remember,
Wasn't there also the Knights Radiant from Dalinar's vision in the Way
Yes.
of Kings?
Yes, one of the
Okay. That's what I was thinking of.
when he's defending against the Midnight Essence, one of the Knights Radiant heals Dalinar, like in that vision. We have a very short Kaladin piece on chapter 77, and he's moping in the war camps. He's not feeling the brightest, and
Normal Kaladin day.
yeah, normal Kaladin hours. The weepings come, and he's talking about how he doesn't have Teft anymore, or sorry, not Teft, Tien, who could always cheer him up during the weeping. Did anybody, or did you guys have anything from this short section of Kaladin here?
Yeah, I think there's all important details here, because he's talking with Moash here in this scene, and he's comparing what Moash is about to do to what Amaram did to him, which
Right.
I think is very, very key. You know, he's telling Moash, you know, hey, you're justifying this whole thing by saying we kill one person to save many, which had convinced him earlier. He was thinking, oh yeah, as a surgeon, sometimes you have to remove, you know, parts like a leg perhaps to save the person. But he's kind of had this realization that, wait, just a minute ago, Amaram used that exact excuse for what he did when he murdered all of my men and took that shard blade. And so it's starting to hit Kaladin just how wrong what Moash is about to do is. And I think he's put the pieces together and realized that that's tied to why Syl is gone as well. He mentions that too. So I think Kaladin is starting to understand the picture a little bit better.
I actually really like that scene because Kaladin quotes Amaram out of context to Moash. Kaladin says something along the lines of, "Yeah, you have to sacrifice the few to save the many." And Moash is like, "Yes, exactly." And Kaladin says, "No. I was quoting Amaram on what he told me after he killed my men, and that's not what we are." But Moash is just hoping that Kaladin stays out of the way for long enough that he can Take Elhokar out.
And also interesting there too, in that same dialogue, it goes on when he oh, that was what Amram said. Moash responds with, "Oh yeah, but he's a Light Eyes," and very tellingly, Kaladin comes back and says, "Well, so are you now," and it maybe hints at Moash. Moash might be sliding a little bit into that trap of, I guess, call it the Amaram trap of feeling like he has the ability now to take things into his own hand and sacrifice those around him for what he thinks is the right path. So dangerous slope that Moash is on.
It has a very specific line where Moash's eyes used to be brown, but they've turned light tan, and Kaladin thinks to himself, wait, those are the same colored eyes as Amaram, actually. Some nice foreshadowing there for you.
Yeah.
Chapter 78. Besides Shallan and Yasna and Kaladin to Bridge 4, this is like our first actual Knights Radiant reveal to another main character. There's plenty of people who have suspicions about each other at this point, but this is the first time Shallan has revealed to anybody exactly what she can do and who she is. And I actually, we'll get here in a second, but Dalinar's response is really funny to me. But do either one of you want to talk about this for a little bit?
Paul, I was looking forward to your take on this, because I feel like this is a pretty big moment here. What were you thinking when she used her powers right in front of Dalinar?
Yeah, so what I liked most about this, my favorite thing about this chapter, is that this chapter happened at all.
Right.
I was really glad that Shallan was just like showing Dalinar and being honest with Dalinar specifically, because if anyone's gonna understand and make proper use of it, it would be Dalinar. So I was just very happy with how it happened. I feel like I don't remember a lot of crazy details from the beginning of this chapter that I maybe should have, like how Dalinar specifically was reacting to it. I know he was like very insistent on it being secret and things like that, which is important. Um, and he talked about like he was trying to like I believe he was talking about like trying to restart the Knights Radiant himself, but like it's kind of just already happened, like, and then he kind of just needs to like form, like get them together, I guess, get the whole group together. But yeah, I was just really happy that this happened. I've kind of been waiting for either her or I don't actually remember at this point. Has Kaladin told Dalinar? I know he doesn't tell like people. Like Bridge 4 knows, but I didn't think even he had told Dalinar. So I've kind of been waiting for this to happen, for Dalinar to be in the loop fully.
Dalinar directly asked Kaladin if he was what he was looking for with the Knights Radiant, and 2 days previous he could have said yes, but Kaladin has killed Syl, so he answers no, I'm not what you're looking for.
Syl's still there somewhere. She's coming back. Don't worry.
We hope.
Please.
Please.
I'm in the denial phase of grieving.
Of grief,
grieving.
Yeah.
Yes. He can't leave us that broken.
He won't do it.
We have faith. I really like this scene because of the choice that Shallan makes. Like Kaladin, when he revealed to Bridge 4, he kind of did that out of necessity. Like he kind of was at the point where he basically had to tell them what he could do, because they'd seen him do so much. There was no other explanation. And Shallan doesn't necessarily have to tell Dalinar here, but she just decides, you know what, I'm gonna take a step of faith here. I'm gonna put my trust in Dalinar and tell him, And she just, stands up, boom, look what I can do. And yeah, Dalinar's reaction to this is a little comical, Trevor. But yeah, I just love the fact that she decides, a moment of decisiveness. You know what? We're gonna do this. I'm gonna take a step. I'm gonna show someone what I can do. Let's get this whole Knights Radiant ball rolling.
Dalinar's reaction is so funny to me because I can totally picture it in my head of as she's holding this image in her hand, and Dalinar like starts crying, and then he starts ranting to himself about like what the first guy I tried to trust this with turned out to be a murderer, and like, wait, you need the cloak. I'm gonna give you the leader of the Knights Radiant, and Shallan's like, whoa, like, hold on, I don't want all that. And Dalinar kind of stops himself. He's like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to overwhelm you there, but he was willing. He was ready to give her the entire leadership of the Knights Radiant, whatever that means, right there. And Shallan's like, hold on.
Yeah, he's just excited, right? I mean, this has all been kind of a what if for him up until this point, and he's getting more and more confident there. He's seen the assassin in white. He's seen Kaladin do some crazy stuffs and really thinks that there's somebody. But then here it is standing before him, proof the Knights Radiant exist, or at least their powers are back. So yeah, he's like half terrified, half just giddy with excitement that finally here we go. And yeah, he wants to do something about it.
Yeah. Our Parshendi. Go ahead, Elliot.
Yeah, before we talk about the Parshendi, actually, it's then also interesting here in this scene that Shallan forces Dalinar not to share her secret. Dalinar is like, oh, okay, I'll keep this definitely, but I have to tell Navani. Navani's gonna have to know. And Shallan thinks about that for a second, and then ultimately is like, no, you're not gonna tell Navani. You're gonna keep this. Like, wow, that's a huge step of confidence. I mean, can you imagine the Shallan we've met way back in like Carbranth, that first scene, standing up to Dalinar and saying something like this? Like, no way.
Right.
This is the confident who she is, has come a huge long way, Shallan, that does. I think Dalinar even responds by saying, I see Yasna in that moment, which was, I thought that was pretty cool.
And Shallan says to herself, I have never received a better compliment in my life than I see Yasna in you. Like that, it's a good moment for her. Now, can I talk about Parshendi?
Yes. So then Shen shows up. Well, other Parshendi first, right?
Other Parshendi first. They kill one of them. They drag Shallan and Dalinar out to go inspect it, and it has red eyes. We've seen a few mentions of this in our interludes as the Parshendi have taken storm form, but for all intents and purposes, this is a Voidbringer. As far as the Alethi are concerned, this thing has red eyes. It has fire shooting out of its hands. Some of the men that killed it have burn marks on them.
In the middle of a rainstorm.
In the middle of a rainstorm, and they are on edge, to say the least.
Yeah, they know it's about to get real. They know something different is happening.
We'll talk about Shen for a little bit. He surrenders himself to the Alethi army, and that's how 78 ends and 79 picks up. Which we'll go back and talk about this epigraph here in a second, because especially the epigraphs to 79 and 80, Elliot, I know you want to talk about here in a second, but Shen surrenders himself to the Alethi army. What are you guys' thoughts on this? Because he definitely doesn't have to, right? Like, he was a spy for the Parshendi. What's his motivation to go back and tell Dalinar about Stormform? does he not want to take it himself, or is his alliance has he seen like true leadership in Kaladin and Dalinar, and that's why he doesn't want to? He wants to try to stop this if this is happening. What's Shen Relaine? What's his motivation here?
I take it as a mixture of both. We saw Shen like be grateful for Dalinar and Kaladin's like authentic leadership and care. Um, and also I mean we know that there were some Parshendi who were skeptical about Stormform, and if Shen was a spy, he probably at least knows some of the people that entered Stormform, and maybe he's seen that it like kind of changes people, or just knows that it's risky business, that this shouldn't be happening. And so that may be some motivation for him as well. I'm curious to see more. Slight side note, I'm really just very glad that Shen is here and coming back. I'm glad that this is kind of turning into a thing. Because when he left, or the development we've had with him before, I was kind of afraid because it was never on the forefront at all. I was kind of afraid that it wouldn't really come into fruition in a big way.
Right.
But it seems like it is going to be pretty big scale, and I'm kind of excited for it. Um, Out of the things that have happened so far in this episode, like this is kind of what I'm most excited about. Um, Here is Shen coming back. I'm also curious to hear Elliot's thoughts a little bit about like Shen and Dalinar talking. Shen seemed way more talkative than normal in general. He was very like honest and upfront, and very like well spoken, and stuff, and it was really cool to see.
Elliot, before you pick it up here, I just want to highlight how much the different forms have an impression on Relaine here. When he's in dull form, he's genuinely having trouble holding a conversation with Kaladin. That's why he hasn't said that's why he hasn't talked to Kaladin that much, because it has an effect on his mind that he's pretty much a parshman. He doesn't have the articulation of what we would consider, a normal person. But as soon as he changes back, we're assuming this is either war form or work form that he's in now. He can talk, and he can have a intelligent, coherent conversation. And then back over to storm form, with what we've seen the effect it have on Eshonai's mind, that it's kind of trapped her mind, and this other voice is in the front, and her rational side of her brain is in the back, like screaming, as we said in one of our interludes. That's what Relaine mentions in this chapter. Is he says that all of the people he cares about are gone, and that monsters are left in their place. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of what form they have to what it does to them mentally. Because on one extreme there's dull form, and on the other extreme there's storm form. So, Elliot?
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add, actually. You guys both said it really well, and covered pretty much all my thoughts. I agree with you, Paul, that I think this is partly he's what Stormform has done to his people. He even says, I think he talks about how he thinks his people are lost. He almost doesn't feel like he's betraying them, because he feels like they are already have been betrayed by Stormform, basically. And
Right.
so there's that side of it. But then there's a side of it where he's decided that Dalinar is his commanding officer, and he's treating him like he has to obey him, even though he's um, a enemy spy turning himself in. So his whole behavior through this is a little bit strange, in that he like is responding to orders and commands from Dalinar. So I would definitely equate that to what you're talking about, Paul, of perhaps he's been inspired perhaps a bit by the leadership of Kaladin, and Dalinar realizes that, hey, maybe they're not all Alethi are terrible, like Sadeas, who butchers coming to talk peace and stuff like that. So maybe he sees a little bit of the other side of it as well. But yeah, good thoughts, guys. You covered everything I thought of.
Not really to do with Relaine, but Rock actually has a cool line in this chapter where Relaine says, "I'm a traitor to both sides," and he doesn't think he has a place anymore. And Rock kind of perks up from the back of the tent and says, No, you're Bridge 4, and just for you being a spy for the enemy side, that doesn't change that. You're still Bridge 4." So there's some cool like identity, like Bridge 4, one of the boys, still going on here, even though they found out that he was a spy for the Parshendi.
Bridge 4, the whole concept of Bridge 4 is pretty awesome. The whole, we'll take anyone and bring them into our family. You're never too broken for Bridge 4. That's really cool.
They have a Herdazian, they have a Horn Eater, they have a Parshman, they have a Light Eyes. What they have Moash, who's I guess now a Light Eyes as well.
They have Teft, who betrayed his own family. Yeah, they got everybody.
World Singer.
Yep, Sigzil.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wait, you said Light Eyes and then Moash, who is now a Light Eyes?
Renarin.
Is there another? Oh, I forget about Renarin.
Mm-hmm.
Like I forget about him in the context of Bridge 4, I guess.
Right.
Just because he didn't go through the same experiences, I guess. But I absolutely love Renarin. So.
And yeah, Renarin has epilepsy, so there's quite a bit of inclusion here in Bridge 4. So.
Should we go back and talk about the epigraph now?
Sure, and that can lead us into chapter 80 here to round out the episode.
Yeah, so I definitely perked up when I read the epigraph from this chapter. I'll go ahead and just read it to you and then point out the part that really jumped out at me. So it's written in kind of this question and answer format. So it says this: For what essential must we strive? The essential of preservation, to shelter a seed of humanity through the coming storm. What cost must we bear? The cost is irrelevant. Mankind must survive. Our burden is that of the species, and all other considerations are but dust by comparison. And these are excerpts from the diagram, right? Yeah, like stuff that was written on walls and bedposts and all kinds of stuff. But the part that I immediately highlighted was that statement: the cost is irrelevant. The cost is never irrelevant. You can use that statement to justify anything. If you claim that the end goal is preserving humanity, the cost is irrelevant, oh boy, you can justify any number of atrocities with that logic right there. That is so badly flawed from a moral and ethical standpoint, that this right here tells me just how flawed Taravangian's diagram and plan is. He's lashed onto this, I'll do anything to save humanity, and he's destroying humanity to save humanity.
Right.
Which is
which leads me back to my question from last week. What did the Night Watcher grant Taravangian from whose perspective? What are we saving humanity from exactly, and what are we doing with it? Like, the Night Watcher granted him capacity, in capital C, to save humankind. But like, from whose perspective? What are we saving? Who are we saving from? What are we saving? There's all sorts of questions there.
I also loved the question that got brought up of Taravangian thinks, or we're kind of guessing, the intelligence is his blessing that he's supposed to use to save mankind, and his emotions and empathy and dullness are the curse. What if he's got it completely backwards? What if the emotion and empathy is what was intended to help him save mankind, and the intelligent one who wants all stupid people to have to kill themselves. Maybe that's the curse side of it. Maybe he's just got the whole thing completely wrong. There's a lot of ways that be very different than Teravangian thinks it is.
So what's the difference between Teravangian and Dalinar? Dalinar is willing to grab the reins, force the High Princes to do what they don't want to do in the short term so that they will do what he thinks they need to do in the long term. We've already highlighted some of the differences here, but what makes Dalinar good and Teravangian bad, if you want to make that argument?
And that is the tough question that I kind of arrived at myself as I was reading this. I'll add to the discussion here the epigraph from chapter 80, because we did another excerpt from the diagram here, and it simply just says, "You must become king of everything." And I noted there that normally when someone comes to you and says, "Oh, hey, I can save the world, but you need to put me in charge of everything. I need to be the one who holds all the power." Usually that's a really bad sign. Usually that's yeah, right, buddy. But I had to pause there and ask myself the question that you're asking, Trevor, is, well, is this kind of what Dalinar is doing? Is Dalinar doing a bit of this in taking the power and just forcing everyone else to do he thinks is right? And yeah, I think we might have brought this up a little bit a while back when Dalinar was asking the question. I think it was am I a tyrant? And we're as a reader, at least me, we're okay with Dalinar seizing the power that he is because we trust Dalinar to do the right thing. We've learned that Teravangian is evil. We can put evil on that, and so we of course don't trust him with power. But is that enough justification? Is it enough to say that Dalinar should have this level of power or should take this just because we know he's good? Because if it was anyone else, we wouldn't trust him or we wouldn't think it was okay.
Right.
Yeah, I don't honestly quite know how to answer that question. That's a tough one.
Any deep philosophical thoughts over there, Paul?
I was trying to think of what to add on. I think Elliot did a good job of summarizing.
I agree.
We had the conversation before of like, is Dalinar a tyrant? And he like is, but like he's kind of seizing power. But from our reader's perspective, we know and trust him. Like we trust him to do what is right, even when it's not the like easy choice to make. Um, and if you just say that I just said, like doing what is right, even when it's not an easy decision, you could say that Teravangian kind of does the same. At least from his perspective. Um, yeah, so it's very different. I feel like the biggest difference is with the practice, right? We talked about the whole like journey before destination. Dalinar is very focused on like we have our destination to get to, but we have to be careful about how we're doing it.
Right.
And Teravangian is more of like, here's the destination we need to get to. We need to get there as soon and as deliberately as possible, kind of no matter what. I feel like is the biggest difference.
It's one.
I like that a lot.
It's probably like the second to last chapter in The Way of Kings when we get an unveiling of exactly who is behind Szeth and Teravangian's motives and all of that. And Teravangian has this kind of off-the-cuff comment to Szeth of saying, in order to save the world, we have to blemish ourselves. Teravangian does think he's doing the right thing, and I mean, depending on your definition, he could be. If this is how his diagram tells him to save the world, he could be trying to do the right thing from his perspective. He's just willing to sacrifice the now to get to where he thinks he needs to be. I don't know if you guys caught it, but in last week's episode, at the very end of that interlude, Teravantian becomes king of Yakovet. He gets there's like this civil war been happening in Yakovet the last in World 6 months or something, and at the end of that interlude, Teravantian becomes king of Yakovet, which is leading him towards this. You must become king of everything, because the reason why he became king of Yakovet is because Zeth killed a bunch of important high princes and the king, so that there was this power vacuum. They had a civil war, and it turned out to be Teravantian who would take the throne next. So Zeth's killings are coming into fruition for Teravantian here. All right. Maybe two more things, and then I will ask you guys a couple questions before we head into the end of the book next 2 weeks. Elokar has a very interesting conversation with Kaladin at the end of chapter 80 here. Eliot, I know you picked this up, and there's a very specific question that Elokar asks Kaladin. Granted, Elokar may not be 100% sober at this point, because he's been hitting the wine while Dalinar's gone. So we actually know where Elokar's true loyalties lie when it comes to the codes. He's all happy about, or can put up with, the codes while his big scary uncle's there, but while his uncle's not there, he hits the wine pretty quick. Either one, if you want to talk about this.
I like the fact that Elokar is coming to Kaladin and asking what are perhaps some honest questions. He's obviously, Elokar has realized that, the people love Kaladin. Kaladin earns respect from his men, from those around him. He's a hero. So he comes to Kaladin and he's like, how do I become a hero? How do I be like you? Which on the surface is like, okay, maybe Elokar is trying to improve here. Maybe he's realizing that he's doing things wrong, and he's going to Kaladin and asking, how can I do this better? But when you read it again, you realize that the questions he's asking are completely focused on himself. How do I become a hero? How do I be remembered in the future? He like closes the conversation with, I will do better. I will be remembered. It's like, oh, hold on a second, buddy. Not asking the right questions here. The right question would be, how do I do better for my people? How do I serve better? How do I be a better? It's what he's really asking is, how do I get the attention that you have? How do I become as famous as you are? It's like almost Elokar, but not quite.
He asks Kaladin, "Am I a bad king?" And
Yeah.
Kaladin gives him an honest answer. Kaladin kind of pauses for a second and says, "Yes, I think you're a bad king." And Elokar gets a little angry at that, but he asked, so Kaladin answered.
Yeah, I feel like Elokar appreciated the honest response. Actually, at least it seemed like it, where he's like, "Well, at least you're being straight with me. At least you're giving me an honest answer." But yeah, I'm sure that didn't do anything to improve his mood.
I really like what y'all had said. I don't have a whole lot to add, because y'all kind of knocked it out of the park there. I was just gonna say that I did really like this part, and I really like that we're starting to see some development with Elokar. I feel like we haven't seen much with him in a long time, ever since like just about since Dalinar went in and kind of went in there with his fisticuffs and taught him a lesson. We haven't seen much growth with Elokar, and I would love to see some, especially with the whole Moash assassination thing. I honestly don't want to see Elokar die. I don't fully know what's going to happen there.
That was going to be my first question as we rounded out this episode of, is this assassination A, happening by the end of this book? B, going to be successful, and who's like, what's going to happen to like Moash and what like that going forward.
So if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen at the end of this book. I'm gonna be pretty certain about that, but I don't think it's gonna actually happen. I think it's gonna get stopped somehow. I think there's either gonna be some form of realization or like justification, or somehow Kaladin is gonna stop it, or someone's gonna stop it. Um, yeah, I'm gonna kind of leave it at that. That's kind of like, I don't know exactly how. Like I don't know what's gonna go down to cause that, but that's my prediction. Is like
There's going to be an
it's not
attempt, but
gonna
it's going to be thwarted.
thwarted in some way. Yeah. If it does happen, like if it's just a casual, okay, like Marsh's whole plan of saying like the assassin in white is coming, everyone hides. He just kills Elokar and then is like, oh no, the assassin in white killed him and vanished. If that happens, then it is going to be at the end of this book. I don't see that being a plot drawn out much longer. Um, so if it does happen, it's going to be this book, but I think it will in some way be stopped.
Elliot?
I'm a little scared that Elokar is gonna get killed here, either by Moash or maybe Zeth. Not 100% sure there, but I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I hope happens. I'll tell you what I really, really wish will happen, and that is that I'd love to see Kaladin decide to do something, save Elokar, and in doing so, repair the Nahel bond he had with Syl. Because allowing Moash to do this seems to be wants him to kill Syl. What if he was able to fix it, if you will? What if he steps in and fulfills his actual calling as a Windrunner to protect those who can't protect themselves, and does step in to protect Elokar, and thus like reinstates himself as a Windrunner and revives Syl? That would be awesome. I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I can say I think that's going to happen, but I really want that to happen.
It's going to say
I
that's
could
a tall order. Kaladin is half
Injured.
dead at this point,
Mhm.
and Moash is a full shard bearer, so if it actually came to that, he'd need some help.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but if it is gonna happen, it's probably gonna happen like that. It's probably gonna be like not an actual battle, but like a like talk to Moash and like convince him otherwise situation, and that would be what would probably restore the bond with Syl. I could very well see that happening.
Y'all are so convinced that Syl's coming back. It's really funny, actually.
We're just so
If she comes
desperate
back,
for it.
that's how it will be. It will be something like that.
Both of you are like, nah,
Um,
she's not dead. She's coming
but
back.
yeah, like, can you imagine how bad the series would be if Syl just dies? Like, come on, you can't do that to us. Come on, like the whole thing would just be ruined. So there's no way he would just. Brandon Sanderson would not just ruin the whole thing he's got going here like that. So, yeah.
All right. Third question. What's happening out on the Shattered Plains? How is this all ending? Dalinar and Shallan have come to the conclusion that they're 2 weeks out into the Weeping. They haven't even started the battle yet. So they've come to the conclusion that they have to take Narok in order to take shelter from the first high storm coming in 2 weeks. What are your guys' predictions on what's happening out there the rest of this book?
I definitely have a prediction on this one. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think that they're going to engage in battle. Shallan's going to go off and try to find the Oathgate because she had that conversation with Dalinar where he's saying, I'm counting on you as our backup plan to find that. I think she's going to find it. I think she's going to find it. I think she's going to figure out how to activate it. But I don't think everyone is going to make it through. I think somehow we're going to get some sort of situation where some people go through the Oathgate and others don't, and they get separated. Where some people, like, let's say Shallan and Adolin, are in Urithiru, but then Dalinar and the rest of the people are stuck in Narak, waiting for the High Storm to come and hoping that they can win the battle and find protection. That's my prediction, is that the Oathgate is going to somehow separate them into two groups.
Okay. Paul?
So my thought with this, so kind of the big moment in the Way of Kings was Kaladin's into part 4, star moment, right? He says the words, right, and it's an incredible scene. It was the coolest part of the book. I'm honestly, my prediction is that a similar thing will happen in this book, but with Shallan. Either there will be some profound discovery. It could be this Oathgate. It could be more words in doing something really significant. I don't know. Maybe somehow she can create illusions of the Voidbringers and fight off the Voidbringers with other. I don't know. Something crazy like that to just flat out win in a fight if they get into one. But that's my prediction, I guess, is I think Shallan will be the integral piece there. Either that or somehow Kaladin will be restored or something, but I don't see that happening right away. I think it's going to be with Shallan.
Okay.
That's a good point. We haven't seen Shallan level up in quite a while, right? She had to share a truth way back in Way of Kings, I think.
One of the last chapters of Way of Kings. Yep.
Yeah. And she's talked about it with Pattern a little bit, where he's kind of prodded her of, oh, you need to develop your abilities. We need to, dive deeper into your truths. And so, yeah, that's a good idea, Paul. I bet that is going to come into play here. I wonder if we still have kind of we've answered a lot about Shallan's past, right? We've followed her flashback up to almost where we picked up with her originally. The only question we haven't really answered is her mother. What happened with her mother? Maybe Shallan's going to share the truth about that with us, and that'll be her level up moment.
I am actually so glad that you brought that up, because I actually was writing this down earlier. One about, I think Shallan will have a breakthrough. Two, it's been a while. At least in part 5, we haven't seen a flashback chapter of any sorts. Which at first I was like, okay, that's kind of fishy. I'm sure there will be something before the end of the book. But also, I mean, we kind of did see we kind of got to the point we saw where her father died, which is kind of the pinnacle that we were looking for over there almost for a while.
Right.
So I would believe if there wasn't, but I would say that there is going to be, and I think we may see something humongous like how her mother died, and that could be the truth. I also just thought about, she just told Dalinar about being a Knights Radiant, and I don't know if that counts. Is that an important thing? Because she's kept that secret for so long. That could help in some way, or maybe that becomes a public thing or something. We'll see.
All right. Is anyone going to die before the end of the book? Szeth is up there. There's also a couple other minor characters where I mean, if you want to consider Shallan and Kaladin, you can, but I don't know how likely that is. But there's a couple, some of our high princes that are with Dalinar might die if you want to go down that route. Their women are with them, Navani, Polona, Any of these characters on your guys' mind as we go through here?
So one character you didn't mention that's on my mind is Moash.
Moash?
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I I don't think either are gonna die. I honestly am under the impression we're gonna get the like civil ending, kind of like Elliot was hoping for, like where maybe Kaladin like kind of intercedes between him and Elokar and talks to him and kind of talks him down. But like Moash is very dead set at this point, so I could see like him or Elokar dying. Um, this is kind of a hard one. So I actually, for the purpose of this question, am not going to talk about like the kind of minor characters like Sabariel, Royan.
Sure.
I could definitely see one of them being thrown in as dying, but I mean, I feel like it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
Right.
So, I think if a major character dies, like really major character, I think it would be Dalinar.
Okay.
Either in the battle or like with if Zeth shows up or something like that. That would be crazy.
Okay.
I don't want it to. I don't want Dalinar to die.
I forgot to
But
mention Adolin.
True.
Could be Adolin defending Dalinar if Zeth shows up.
Could be Adolin and Renarin, like in an attempt to. If Zeth shows up, then the whole squad there is at risk. Like everyone is just like, um, at high risk for sure. If someone dies, I would guess that it's Dalinar, and that going forward, people are gonna have to try and like work together to pick up the pieces of his legacy, like
Okay.
his sons and Kaladin and Shallan and everyone. So that's my wild guess.
So in that case, Paul, then would the next book have to be like flashback Dalinar the whole time or something like that? Perhaps.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that, and I think it could still work.
Yeah.
It could be about Dalinar's past, and then how the people who knew him work to uphold his vision and uphold where he was and things like
Okay.
that. I would imagine that in Oathbringer we'd find out about his past with the Night Watcher and his wife and things like that. And this is if he dies. I don't want him to die, but I think if a major character is going to die, it's Dalinar.
Okay. Just a clarifying question: is Zeth a major character?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay. Just clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
Elliot.
So I think Kaladin, Shallan, and Adolin are all safe. And the reason why is because we've just set up our love triangle here. I don't see us losing that immediately after setting that up.
Okay.
So I'm guessing that's going to develop later, further on, and become a point of conflict later. So I think that plot line is enough plot armor for the three of them. Not super. I'm actually super worried about one of either Navani or Renarin. Actually, I I'd be super worried for Renarin if we'd had a little more of a lead in to it. I mean, we've still got some chapters left, so it still could happen. But like, we haven't really seen Renarin much in the last few chapters, so I feel like we would kind of lead into getting emotionally attached to him again and then losing him. But could easily see Renarin or Navani being in there. If I had to pick a big character, I gotta have to say Zeth. I think that Zeth is either going to get defeated by Dalinar and Adolin and Shallan, or maybe something a little crazier like he comes up against Shallan, realizes his entire life has been a lie, that thin barrier of truth he's got around him is going to shatter, and he'll either take his own life or turn against like Taravangian or someone and get himself killed doing something like that. So I think if I had to guess, Death is not going to make it to the next book.
That's not what Paul wanted to hear.
I know.
So I do need to clarify a little bit. Zeth has been the character I'm most intrigued by, and especially at this point, I still am very intrigued. But with the new information with the Teravangian interlude, um, I guess I don't have as much hope or respect for him as before. Before, I was like, okay, he has some super great power behind him that's making him do these things, but he himself is good. Like he's a good guy or something, and I was really hopeful there. And it's starting to look less like that, which I'm honestly a little sad about. So I'm not bothered by what Elliot is saying, but I don't see Zeth dying here. Um, we will see. I feel like if he does die, he's going to the reason why I think he won't die actually is because some things are gonna have to happen. Either he's gonna have to share information about Teravangian or who's behind him, for the story to progress, or there's gonna have to be some greater power revealed. Because if not, if he dies, just let's say he tries to kill Dalinar and it dies in a fight, um, then I mean they just keep going against the Parshendi, right? But then the Teravangian scheme just I feel like becomes way too off put from the story. I don't know how it would come back to be involved. Is my only thought. I do definitely agree. Continuing with Adolin, Kaladin, and Shallan, the love triangle plot armor is too strong. They're safe and sound.
Gotcha.
We're definitely taking the very meta approach to our predictions here, trying to
Yeah.
guess the plot line
Yes, true.
characters down the road.
Any closing thoughts on episode 44?
With the topic of deaths, so I mean, there's way too many variables that are going to happen that I don't know about for me to say this, but I would be disappointed if to have a sad death, they just kill off a minor Royan or Sabariel or something, and call it an emotional death. I would be a little disappointed there. I'm not saying I want a major character to die because I don't, but I guess I'm afraid that will happen. They'll just be like, oh, Royan fell in battle nobly, and we're not very emotionally attached to him, I guess.
I do want to point out that we won major at the end of Way of Kings, which I thought we would. That's pretty common for a massive book like this to have a major character death toward the end, but we didn't. Our major character death came at the beginning of Words of Radiance, so it also could be very possible we don't lose anybody through the end of it.
Very true. I was gonna say that as the other option. I would much rather a major character die or no deaths than minor character deaths to call it a day as
and try to pass it off as the emotional death, right?
Very much a fan of no one dying here. None of our major characters. Also, I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes down for that to be good or bad in the story, but yeah.
All right. With that, we can close out this episode. For anyone who's reading along with us, just so you guys know that next week we are going to do full spoilers through to the end of the book, and we will be doing 2 episodes from chapter 81 through to the end of the book. Next week it'll be more focused on chapters 81 through 84, but we're not gonna avoid spoilers for the rest of the book. So go ahead and finish the book for anybody who's reading along with us, and then we'll talk about chapters 81 through to the epilogue next week. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Eliot, this week, and we can reconvene next week for the end of Words of Radiance.
My pleasure.
Let's do it.